Sooner Nation, OU Insider subscribers, Coach Bryan Clinton enthusiasts, OU fans who are incredibly excited about the direction of the women's sports teams in Norman. This is definitely the podcast for you. This is another episode of the Oklahoma Drill, podcast fueled by OU Insider and the Ravels Network. I am Jesse Crittenden. I am joined by Mr. Thunder, Mr. Bryan Clinton. And Bryan, we need to start before we're going to talk about football. We're going to talk about softball. But before we do anything, we need to briefly take a moment to talk about the arrow pointing through the sky for the OU women's basketball program. Man, yeah. I was in the arena on Saturday and Monday for their two tournament games. I saw them beat the hell out of Iowa to advance to the Sweet 16, which was already not only a big moment, just a huge moment for the program. To see the fan support in the arena was huge. That game was it was loud and it was raucous. Mm-hmm. And then less than 24 hours later, OU lands Aaliyah Chavez, one of the best recruits this program has ever seen. Women's basketball at Oklahoma. It's going up, Bryan. Yeah. In my personal opinion, no arrow is pointing up for women's basketball. That's what I would say.
Yeah. Way up. Yeah, I'm excited. As I was telling you before we started the show, that I remember the days where, Cherry Cole was on a pedestal with the best coaches in sports, around here. Everybody was, just absolutely loved following her. And you had the Paris sisters and you had, this is the most excited I have been about women's basketball for Oklahoma in quite some time. I think there was a hint or a hope that they would land Aaliyah Chavez. But when it actually happened, I don't mean to I don't want to put too fine a point on it, but from a perspective, landing a player of her magnitude, this would be like getting a Jocelyn Allo for softball. This would be like getting an Adrian Peterson an Adrian Peterson in football. It's a big, big deal and potentially program changing.
Those are great comparisons because you really can't overstate. Watch 5 minutes of Chavez's tape.
Yep.
And you'll see why it's such a big deal. And also for Oklahoma, for all this to happen in the span of a couple of days, for them to make the Sweet 16 for the first time in over 10 years, to do it for the first time under Jenny Baranczyk, and to add Aaliyah Chavez, and then to think about what they'll have next year. Reagan Beers can come back. Peyton Verhulst can come back. Sahara Williams can come back. All of a sudden, you think about where this program is right now and where it can be. And this is the kind of growth you want to see in any program, men's or women's. If you're a fan of a school, you want to see the trajectory going up. And OU making the Sweet 16 after the first 3 years under Jenny, which had really, really good moments, but kind of disappointing ends in the round of 32, to actually break through to the Sweet 16 and do it in dominating fashion is one thing. But then to add getting this type of recruit where, to be honest with you, Bryan, it's one of those things that, everybody was paying attention to this recruit. Everybody across the entire sports landscape was paying attention to this recruit. And the fact that she landed in OU, the fact that she's in the backyard of Texas Tech, she's close to Texas, and lands at OU, for all of the discussions about NIL and program attractiveness and all of that stuff. And I know a lot of those discussions center around football, and I get it, and men's basketball. I get it. Those are the two marquee sports for most programs.
Yeah.
For that to happen at women's basketball, and then you think about softball, the trajectory continuing to point up, women's gymnastics and men's gymnastics. The gymnastics program's going up, track, volleyball. It's women's sports at Oklahoma, man. It's
doing
coming.
It right.
It's coming,
they
man.
Are absolutely doing it right. It is. It's really cool too because like you said, I think football obviously is always going to get the biggest. That's going to be the biggest draw, but for not just the women's teams to be successful, but to be elite
Yeah,
is really exciting.
it is.
Like,
I gotta tell you, man, being at that game on Monday was so fun against Iowa. It was just fun to be there, and also
yeah,
we got to sit courtside. The media did when normally we're relegated to on top of the building for regular games there, but because the NCAA tournament runs this thing, media got to sit courtside and to be so close to the floor and feel the energy and watch these two really good teams go at it and the crowd and it was telling you, man, anybody that hasn't jumped on the women's basketball bandwagon, genuinely a never a better time to do so.
right. Yep.
It's a lot of fun. Plus, softball's got a fun matchup against Tennessee
Big
coming
one.
this weekend.
Oh yeah.
So we're going to talk about softball, but just wanted to give a shout out to women's basketball, and we'll have coverage. We had coverage of the Saturday, Monday games at OU Insider. We'll have coverage of the Saturday game against UConn at OUinsider.com. Make sure to go there if you guys want to see more coverage. But Bryan, let's talk about the other thing that's going on right now, and that's spring football. And I got to be honest with you. We didn't talk about spring football last week, did we? We just talked about softball,
Yeah, just softball.
right? Um, I told you I was racking my brain
Mm.
thinking about.
We didn't talk much about softball actually. I take that back because it was the Missouri. It was the Missouri series. I just
We
had a
didn't
brain
talk.
fart.
Did we? Yeah,
My
God, all these weeks are running together,
I
man.
can't even remember what I ate yesterday. Maybe even this morning I might struggle.
I can't
Asking
believe
me
it's
what?
almost May or
Yeah,
April.
right.
God, I don't even know what
Exactly.
month it is.
Exactly. There you go.
But we haven't talked a ton about football, and I'll be honest with
Yeah.
you. I'll be honest with you. The spring is such an interesting thing to cover for people who haven't done it, which is most people. Um, the spring is one of those things where it's such a different kind of isolated thing to cover because spring practices, for the most part, are about getting into the swing of things, conditioning, just getting a
Yeah.
chance for some of these young guys to get integrated, all this stuff. And now this year's different because you've got Mateer and Arbuckle on the offense. You got a ton of newcomers. You got Venables calling the defense. So all those things make it different. But, there's so much sunshine pumping that goes on in the spring, which is why I wanted to have a candid discussion with you about a position group in particular, and that's the cornerback room. And the
Yeah.
reason why I want to talk about the cornerback room is because I've done a ton of radio hits the last couple of weeks, and I've had people ask me, is there some semblance of, is there an expectation that the defense can be better next year? Is there an expectation that the defense takes a step back? What are the expectations for this defense? And I have different answers you can throw at those things. I think my stock answer has been that I think the defense can be better. I think the
Mhm.
ceiling is higher. I do. I also think it's lower. I think the floor is lower. The ceiling
Yeah.
is higher and the floor is lower. There's a few different reasons for that. But the more I thought about it, I was like, I think one of the reasons why is that cornerback room.
Yeah.
For this defense to hit its ceiling, a lot has to go right in that cornerback room. So I'm curious for you. I guess first to ask you, what do you feel like this? What do you feel like the ceiling of this defense can actually be, and how much does the cornerback room play into that? Before we talk about specifics of the cornerback.
Yeah. I think I think I'll kind of just piggyback off of what you said. The variance is greater. Like it could. I do think across the board, athletically, across the board, I think you are better player for player from an athletic perspective on the defensive side of the ball. Danny Stutzman, a lot of what he brought to the table was was his experience and his leadership. Like those were his better qualities. He's still an incredible athlete. Like guy's going to be a top 3 pick or top 3 round pick. But I think just from an just absolute athletic standpoint, I think your linebacker room probably takes a step up in athleticism. I think your safety room, Billy Bowman, again, another incredible athlete, guy with a crazy good motor. But the guys coming in behind him, the Jaden Hardys and the Reggie Powers and the other guys coming in behind him on top of Peyton Bowen having another year, Robert Spears Jennings coming back and being fully healthy, like all of that stuff is great. But then you look at the defensive line, you added Marvin Jones Jr., who was a former 5-star guy. You add a healthy PJ. I'm not even going to try it. You had
We got to talk to him on Tuesday.
Yeah.
We got to talk to him on Tuesday.
Yeah.
I wish you had been there because I would have made you try to say his last name in front of him.
And I would have just said Pat. Adbare. I'm just going to roll with Adbare.
It's close enough.
Yeah. But yeah, you add some guys like that and more athleticism just from the younger guys coming up like Danny Okoye. You just go across the board. There's more athleticism. But the exciting part about it is, or the variance of that is with the youth coming up, there are more opportunities for missteps. So that is something. I think you lose the experience, but you gain the athleticism. So I think your ceiling, like you just said, it's a longer way of saying it. Your ceiling's higher, your floor is lower.
I agree. And I think, look, there's going to be so much, and I've said this before, there's going to be so much talk about the offense, and we'll talk about it, and specifically about the running back rooms, the tight end room, the offensive line, even the wide receiver room. There's questions up and down the offense. But I've said before that a big part, like as much as the offense needs to get better, if OU wants to make a real jump in 25, they really can't afford much drop off from last year's defense. Like they can't.
Right.
Where OU's defense was probably, I haven't looked at the stats in a second, but going week by week every year last year and looking at where this defense ranked in pretty much every statistical category, plus going to every single game, this defense is probably like the 20th best defense. I don't know. Somewhere in the late teens, early 20s.
Yeah.
It's probably fair, right?
Yeah, I would say so.
With moments of being a top 10 defense and moments that they weren't a top 10 defense.
Yeah.
They really can't afford much slippage, which is why, because you just laid out everything. Like, do I have a little bit of a question about linebacker depth? Sure, I do. And we've talked about it. But when you look at what is at the top of the linebacker room, you feel really damn good, right?
Yep.
Defensive line, specifically defensive end. Do I have a little bit of a question about Marvin Jones Jr. or PJ Adibawara or Danny Okoye, just because those aren't guys that have, we haven't seen it here at Oklahoma, or PJ, we've seen flashes, but not consistency. Mm-hmm. No, but I know what I'm getting in that room. I know,
Yep.
The variance is lower, I think. The cornerback room could go, and also safety, you just mentioned, like Robert Spears Jennings, Peyton Bowen needs to get healthy, sure. But those two guys coupled with Mike Boganowski, Jaden Hardy, I'm not, when you look at the cornerback room, that to me is the area of the biggest variance on this entire team. It is. And part of it is we saw that it was the weak spot of this team last year. So it's that weird thing where it's not that it hurts to lose the guys you lost, right? It's not like Woody Washington had a great year. It's not like Kenai Walker was a fan favorite. It's not like Des Malone was an all-time Sooner.
Mm-hmm.
So you needed upgrades at those positions anyways, but losing them, you're losing a lot of the guys that played last year. And then when you look at what's left over, Eli Bowen, who was fantastic last year, is hurt right now. Now, is that a concern for his fall availability? No, it's not. But he's hurt right now. And then you look at some of the other names in that room is Gentry Williams, who has played 12 games out of the last 26. He played 17 snaps last year. You've got
Yep.
Jacoby Johnson, who it was a weird year for him.
Yep.
So, and we're going to talk about some of these young guys in a minute, but I think that's why I have questions is because if everything goes right in that room, if everybody's healthy and everything goes right, I'd feel pretty damn good about throwing out Eli Bowen and Gentry Williams.
Yeah.
But if I think and I want you to add on to this. My concern is if you don't get that healthy season from Gentry, things start to feel pretty wonky pretty
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah.
I don't know. How do you feel?
Yeah. No, it all swings on health for those top guys. You know, if this defense is going to reach its potential, you can't have a glaring weakness in one spot, especially going up against offenses week in and week out that have the athletes to take advantage of that. You're going to be playing again as murderer's row. It's the hardest schedule in college football, and most of those teams that you're going to be playing have elite offenses. They just it's what you're going to face. So you need dudes at the cornerback spot, and I think you know the reason why I would lean. If you asked me, you know, mortgage is on the line here. You're betting one way or the other. Um, is this defense better or is it worse? Is it more likely to be better or is it more likely to be worse? Um, you know, statistically, with all the things that they lose in those key spots, you would think worse would be the spot I would go. But because the main concern is at corner, I actually think I would lean the other direction because on the defensive side of the football, the spot with the least amount of nuance, the spot with the least amount of experience being a vital factor of whether or not you're successful is playing corner. Um, it is a position that, and there are techniques and things that you pick up over the years. None of it's easy,
Right.
but if you're going to separate the positions out, playing cornerback is something that a young player could come in and thrive if he has the pieces, if he's got the ability. I mean, Eli Bowen last year is a perfect example of this. Nobody saw that coming outside of just a few people in the know, and he was fantastic. He was arguably the best cover player they had last year all season long.
It's not even
I
arguable.
mean, yeah. So he sets the precedent for that, but it's just really difficult to bank on is this finally the time that Gentry's feeling 100%. If it is, if he does, I think the ceiling for the secondary is ridiculous. I mean, if he's truly healthy all season long and you have Gentry Williams on one side, Eli Bowen, and then some of the guys that are showing out behind them working in consistently, not to mention Kendall Dolby back and healthy, like, whew, like you're talking about a really, really strong secondary, somebody, a team that could take leaps and bounds in that department over last year. But injury history would suggest that might be a little harder to count on. So yeah, it's an interesting perspective to look at, but I would say just because of the athletes in the room, I would lean towards things being better than worse in that department. But we won't know until the lights come on, so we'll
Well,
see.
you mentioned Eli Bowen there, which I think is a good segue because man, was he a godsend last year. He was
Oh
so
my
good.
goodness, yeah,
Um, OU's gonna kind of need because even like your top three at corner, presumably, is Eli Gentry and Jacoby Johnson. That's your top three.
yep,
So all of us, so even if you get a healthy Gentry Williams season, which Oklahoma really, really needs a healthy Gentry Williams season.
mm-hmm.
Even if you get that, you still need a fourth guy and probably a fifth guy. And that's also given that, I think we both believe Jacoby Johnson can be good. I don't even think it's fair to really judge anything that happened with him last year, given how weird that offense defense transition was. Um, but even we don't really know what Jacoby Johnson can be. I think we both think he can be good,
Yeah.
but we don't know. So
Right.
even if Jacoby's great, and even if Gentry Williams stays healthy, you need a fourth or fifth guy. You start looking at the rest of these cornerbacks, and all of a sudden you're looking at guys like Jeremiah Newcomb, Devon Jordan, even Malik Hawkins. All of a sudden, the rest of that cornerback room is really, really young.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to be optimistic, you can look at Eli Bowen last year, of a young guy who not only proves he can play snaps, but like proves to be monumentally important to that defense, which is why one guy that's come up as a guy who's emerging this spring is Cortland Guillory.
Oh, yeah.
He was a 4-star recruit, or Rivals had him as a 4-star. And he's been the guy. I'll just be honest with you, Brian. When we talk to some of these players and media availabilities, sometimes they get asked, like, who's emerging? Who's standing out? And they'll literally either just say they all are, or they'll just start listing every single player at every position. So it's like, hey, this doesn't really tell me that much.
Yeah.
Several players have gone out of their way to talk about Guillory. Even when we talked on Tuesday, Kendall Dolby mentioned him. Gentry Williams mentioned him. And Cortland Guillory was the first guy they mentioned.
Mm.
And I know you've got a story coming about him, but they need somebody to emerge. What do you think about Cortland Guillory? And how much is the Eli Bowen path? Is that not only something that's sustainable, but is that something that can happen?
Yeah. I think we saw it last year with, like you just mentioned, with Bowen. It is not only has the precedent been set, but I think because there's not a guy like Woody Washington. Honestly, didn't end up playing that many snaps at corner last year. Say again.
He remarkably didn't play very many snaps last year.
And so with that, I think it not only with that and with Kendall Dolby going down early in the season like that, that changed their personnel quite a bit. But I think you're in a position now where, one, if you can't have a fully healthy Gentry Williams, you're gonna have to turn to somebody else. And I think that there are going to be spots where you might be forced to look to a guy that hasn't played a whole lot of snaps there, especially if you don't have a good bill of health for a lot of these guys. So yeah, I think there's one absolute there's fire to the smoke, especially if it's coming from several guys, and it's not just players. I mean, you hear it from pretty much everybody you talk to. If there's a guy on the defensive side of the ball that's standing out right now, it's Cortland Guillory. So yeah, there's absolutely a path, and I think that he feels like we heard last year with some guys, some young guys that were standing out that ended up playing huge roles as the season progressed. I think he's kind of right there along that same trend. So it's really exciting, and it's somebody that I absolutely would buy stock in now if you don't know who he is.
I agree with you. And it's really good news that he is emerging, because they need that. But then I think you wonder, even when you look at last year, yards per game, passing yards allowed per game, OU ranked 43rd, which is not only is it not that bad, but it's a lot better than where this defense had been. Where they got burned was deep.
Yep.
They were 113th in passing yards of 20 yards or more allowed, or passing plays of 20 yards or more allowed. 113th. They were near the bottom of the country the entire year. I think So I say all that to say I wonder if he's going to be a guy that can have an impact in that way. The I wonder though, that is such a tough. It's man, cornerback. Is there a hard outside of quarterback? Is there a harder position to play in football?
No, because you either have it or you don't.
Yeah.
Yeah, you are literally being told keep arguably the best athletes from creating space in open field. Like stick with them on the hip, and they know what play they're running, and you don't.
Yep. Yeah. And so I mentioned that to say if there's one glaring weakness with this defense that they have to get better at, it's not getting beat over the top. It's not getting beat so much in one-on-one. It's not being a very vulnerable secondary when it comes to big plays. It's a tough thing to ask of a guy in Cortland Guillory who is listed at 6 foot and 170 pounds.
Yeah.
It's a tough thing to ask him.
Yep.
Now, could he do it? Because Eli Bowen is not any bigger, and Eli Bowen was fantastic last year. But so I think you don't just need health. You need the guys in that room. Like if OU can stay about where they were last year in every other spot and just get a little bit better at defending long passes, this can easily be a top 15 defense next year.
Oh yeah.
Maybe top 10.
Yeah. Yeah. If you have the combination of good cover guys and a pass rush, I mean, if you have both of those things and a pulse at linebacker, you can be really good. Like that's what it takes. I mean, really, in this day and age, if you can get to the quarterback and keep from having a lot of space created by the wide receivers, you're in good shape. So, and I think Oklahoma has much more than a pulse at linebacker, and I think they have. I'm really excited about the interior of the defensive line too. So I think with all of those things, if cornerback steps up and they are above average to great, I mean that's the last question you had on the defense, honestly. And I think that just like you just said, top 15, top 10 is not out of the question.
What do you think about Devon Jordan and Jeremiah Newcomb? Guys who are they're coming into their second year, and we saw them in spots last year. So I'm not saying like use the limited film we got last year to judge their future, but I mean, ideally you've got like 5 guys in that room that you can play.
Yeah.
And even if Cortland Guillory really hits, and even if Gentry Williams is healthy, you might need someone like Devon Jordan or Jeremiah Newcomb to play. Can we take that much from last year on what we saw from them?
Honestly, I liked some of the stuff that I saw from Devon Jordan last year. He didn't play a ton, but when he did, I wasn't. He didn't stick out, which is a good thing at corner. Yeah. If you don't stick out, if nobody talks about you, then you're doing your job, and that's a good thing. With him being a Union guy up here from Tulsa, he was somebody that I was kind of hoping would emerge just because, I love those stories, but he ended up playing well in spots last year. And so with him, yes, I think there's an opportunity there. Newcomb, I'm not as positive about. I know that there were opportunities, there were times, but I honestly don't remember a whole lot of him on the field last year. And I knew he was highly touted coming in, but it's how does it translate? I don't know yet.
The situation you're looking at, regardless with this cornerback room, is like if I had to, I think this might be the most concise way I can put it. Somebody who hasn't played 50 snaps on a college football field is going to need to play like 250.
Yep.
Next year.
Yep.
Because even if you look at the cornerback room a year ago, in the snaps they logged a year ago, you had 510 from Eli Bowen, which led the group, which is also crazy given that he barely played to start the year. 510 from Eli Bowen. You got 424 from Kenai Walker, 371 from Des Malone, 356 from Woody Washington, and 230 from 237 from Jacoby Johnson. So that is 5 cornerbacks who logged at least 230 snaps. So I think that's part of not concern is maybe, but if you're looking at where could this defense be vulnerable, it's that you've got Eli Bowen, Gentry Williams if he's healthy, and Jacoby Johnson, who you can feel pretty like those 3 guys. You can feel pretty good about what they can bring if everything goes well. But you need, I mean, for one, OU had 4 cornerbacks last year that played at least 350 snaps. They had 5 that played at least 230. So you're going to need 1 or 2 other guys, not only just to emerge for spot snaps, but to play like a lot.
Right.
You know?
Yep.
Which is why I ask about Devon Jordan and Jeremiah Newcomb, because even if Cortland Guillory hits, you're going to need somebody else to play like 20 snaps a game, 15 snaps a game.
Yeah. Well, and I think, you know, as much as Kendall Dolby is going to be a guy that I think he plays a huge factor at the cheetah spot. He's one of your better cover guys. If they get in a pinch, it's not out of the realm of possibility for them to put him at corner as well. I mean, that's
a good point.
I wouldn't. That's what initially during his time at NEO, like he was a cover corner and played really well out of that spot. So I could see that happening too. But yeah, you nailed it. Somebody is going to have to step up and play a lot more football than they ever have, or it could be something that they approach in the transfer portal.
I wouldn't be shocked if they hit if they add a cornerback in the portal. Yeah. Like if you're looking at positions of need, like genuine need, not only where do you need guys, but where do you need like an experienced guy? It's
tight end
and corner and center. Because also one of the things that we need to talk about before the end of spring is outside of Troy Everett, who the hell's playing center?
Young guy, I guess. Yeah.
It's not great when you look at that room.
Right.
It's not. So again, you don't just need an impact guy, but you need an impact guy that has experience. I think cornerback is going to flow a little bit under the radar for some people. It's a top 3 position of need for me. Even if Gentry Williams hits, even if Cortland Guillory hits, with how much is riding on next year, and with how the biggest glaring weakness for this defense last year was long passing plays, you need to get somebody else.
Well, and I will say this, your snap counts are going to look a little bit different this year, because I think you can't overlook the fact that with Brent Venables calling the plays again, you're probably going to have a lot more 4-man fronts than 3-man fronts. Like that's
a good point.
Dating back. So you'll have one less spot for a defender, for a secondary player to be out there. So, I mean, take that with what you will. There might be less snaps to go around, but it's still, your point is still perfectly valid. I think it's one of the spots that you absolutely need, because it's not a slight on the guy at all, because Gentry Williams is absolutely he's an incredible cornerback when he's able to be out there. He's one of the better ones in the SEC when he's fully healthy. But we just haven't seen it to this point. And you can't bank a season that is as important as this one on the health of a guy that's played 12 in the last 26 games.
I couldn't have said it better. And with that, I think we're going to transition to talking about some softball. And Bryan, before we get to this Tennessee series, which is a really interesting one to me, I had not planned on talking about OU's midweek trip to Wichita State. I genuinely wasn't even on my radar. Like when I was thinking about the pod yesterday, wasn't even on my radar to talk about. And then OU gave up 16 runs. And during the game, they win 19-16. During the game, I'm at home. I'm literally in a group chat with 3 of the other softball reporters, and I'm literally going through schedule by schedule to find out all the times OU has given up 16 runs, because I knew they had given up 16 against UCLA in 2019 in the Champ Series. But I was going through like, when have they given up? I found 3 times they've done it since 2010. The program record is 19. In 1995, they gave up 19 runs. Midweek games are weird. Midweek games are all over the place. Didn't UCF beat Florida?
4-0. Yep.
So midweek games are
They
weird.
are weird.
You don't scout them. I can almost guarantee you that this coaching staff spent 5 seconds on Wichita State and 5,000 hours on Tennessee this weekend.
Yeah.
But anybody that had a question or that has had questions about this pitching staff, those questions did not get answered by watching that game yesterday.
No, they did not.
Now, if you want more evidence to suggest you just throw it away, it's that Sam Landry was not very good in relief, even. But Kirsten Deal got pulled. They after I think 2.5 innings. Yep. Peyton Monticelli comes in, gets pulled. She gives up a bomb, then walks 2 batters and gets pulled. I can promise you they did not want to play Sam Landry yesterday.
No.
If there was one goal yesterday for this coaching staff, it was to not play Sam Landry.
Yeah.
And they had to play her.
Yeah.
I don't know how much. I mean,
yeah,
the offense was awesome.
Right.
I don't know how much stock you put into it.
Yeah. Midweek games are tough. But I will say this, that staff does nothing, that coaching staff does nothing by accident. And so they must have felt this was an important game. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't count towards SEC play, but I don't know if that, maybe I'm reading too much into the tea leaves, but maybe.
I was surprised they put Sam Landry in.
Yeah.
If that's where you're
right.
going.
Yeah. That's kind of what I'm getting at is for them to pull the trigger and put her out there. I don't know if that says, the other arms in this circle are, maybe they're still a little bit fragile. Like they haven't experienced this kind of pushback yet, or this kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Adversity. And, they were hoping that Landry would be able to just cool things off and like keep things rolling. But, it was really surprising that they were out there, especially with what you have coming up. I mean, Tennessee is going to get it done with their arms. Like that's their strength, obviously, but, it was still really surprising. And I can't really get over the fact that they threw that many arms in a game against Wichita State.
I was shocked they threw Landry. And I think part of that is because Landry will start no less than 2 games this weekend.
Yep.
She may have to play all 3 if Audrey Lowry isn't back, which I asked Patty Gasso about Audrey on Tuesday. Her answer was vague. She said she's going to throw, she's going to get some work in, but she was non-committal about whether she would play either yesterday, which she didn't, or this weekend against Tennessee. If Audrey Lowry can't go, Sam Landry's going to probably have to start 2 games and probably play in all 3. So I was shocked that even with as poorly as Isabella Smith has played the last few weeks, I just would have thought you'd do anything to not throw Sam Landry in that game.
Yeah.
But you might be right. And that's why, I think both things can be true. You don't have to put a ton of stock into that game yesterday. Is it a little concerning or just was it a little surprising? Sure. Yeah. But you're hoping in a conference like this with how much some of those pitchers have struggled the last couple of weeks, you would have hoped that yesterday was a confidence builder.
Yes.
Instead of being something that was like, oh,
yep,
ooh, things don't look good. So, and that's the other thing is because coming into this weekend, Tennessee is not the best offense that OU will face. I think they're 23rd in runs per game. The offense was not very good against Arkansas in their last 3-game series over the weekend. They scored 6 runs across the 2 games.
Yep.
And they got beat 2-1. It's not the best offense they'll face. But It's one of the best pitching staffs they'll face.
Yes, it is.
Tennessee, number one in ERA, 1.33 team ERA. That is quite a bit better than second place Oregon at 1.7. Pretty significant gap there. So I think that's, again, and we've talked so much about the pitching staff, it's not that I don't think either of us want to beat it into the ground, but when you're coming into this weekend, it's like, well, the thing that bailed them out against Wichita State yesterday was that the Wichita State had no chance to slow down OU's offense.
Sure.
Tennessee could slow down OU's offense.
Oh, yeah.
We just saw it against Missouri, that OU offense got slowed down.
Yep.
Tennessee's pitching staff is a pretty big step up from Missouri's pitching staff.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got Pickens for Tennessee, who's got a .86 ERA and 89 innings pitched. They've got three arms who have thrown at least 37 innings who have a 1.8 ERA or below. All five of their pitchers who have entered a game this season have an ERA lower than 1.82. All five of them. So if you're looking at, if this offense gets slowed down,
yep.
I don't know. What's your take on this matchup?
Well, the first thing you just mentioned Pickens. I'm sure everybody's probably seen it at this point, but she just set the record for the fastest pitch ever ever monitored in a softball game.
Patty got asked about it on Tuesday. She was like, "Yeah, we're gonna have to practice a little extra hard."
Well, somebody had posted, this is the equivalent of 110 mile an hour fastball from 40 feet. And I'm like, holy crap. Like, just imagine. It was good enough. It was good enough that Bree Ellis posted on Twitter, yeah, I knew exactly what pitch they were talking about whenever they said that she had broken the record. So, this is one of those series that Tennessee, if there has been a team to this point that is ready made to beat Oklahoma, this is the team so far.
I agree with you.
Like, that's how I would preface this. Now, when Oklahoma's bats are hot, it's really, it's just really difficult to match them step for step, especially if you have somebody like Sam Landry in the circle that can maintain things and not let them get away from her. But Tennessee has three arms that I would feel pretty confident in keeping Oklahoma somewhat manageable. And that's tough. That's really tough. And the fact that you're probably going to see their best arm twice.
That's the thing. I think this weekend might legitimately be like just become the Landry versus Pickens weekend.
Yeah. I would be more surprised if it didn't than if it was.
She has pitched 89 of their 206 innings.
Yep.
Pickens has.
Yep.
And this
is a big series for them. I mean, they're coming off a loss to Arkansas. Like this, it's a huge series.
No, and also this weekend features Saturday's game is on ESPN, so it's the first nationally televised game of the season for OU softball.
Yep.
We'll talk about the offense in a second, but you're coming into this weekend. I mean, I think the disappointing thing about that Wichita State game in particular was because Kirsten played better against Missouri. She gave up an early bomb when she came in relief of Isabel Smith, and then for 4 innings didn't allow a hit or a run. She was great. And then she just looked shook against Wichita State. Just the confidence wasn't there.
Right.
So I think you're hoping. I mean, this is a Tennessee offense that they've got 2 batters batting better than 294 in conference play. No one's batting 400. This has not been an elite Tennessee offense. I think they can be. They're just not playing that way right now. Right. But Landry playing against Wichita State honestly influences a little bit the way I look at this series.
100%.
It does, because you've got to think if you're getting to a place where Sam Landry is like if this coaching staff gets to a place where it recognizes that it's going to be the Landry show and we've just got to make it work behind her, Now you're in a spot where you've got to do what you can to get wins in conference play without overthrowing her.
Right.
That's a real thing too.
Yep.
I just wonder, do they do game one, game three, starting her and try to avoid playing her game two? Because that's what they did against Missouri. Is they didn't Arkansas, they played her all three games.
Right.
Started her one, but
Yep.
played her all three games.
Yep.
Against Missouri, they started her games 1 and 2 and kept her away from games 1 and 3 and kept her away from game 2. I wonder, do you go into the weekend thinking we're going to need Landry at some point in all three of these games, or do you go in thinking no, we're starting our game 1 and 3 and we've just got to make it work in game 2? And if they do
I
that, how do they handle game 2?
I don't think it's going to. I don't think it's going to affect how they do it. That it's nationally televised on Saturday, but I do think that there is at least a part of me that says if things get tight in that game, you have to go with your best arm. Like, I mean, so if I was to guess, I would say they absolutely throw her game one. She starts that without question, but I would say it's a break glass in case of emergency situation that if they can handle things, if the bats are doing okay in game two, um, they'll win in a barn burner if they have to. But the break glass in case of emergency, like I would say it's like a soft plastic, not really a glass. Like it doesn't have to. It doesn't really have to get that bad for her to, because if you have an opportunity to win the series and rest her on Sunday,
That's a good point.
that would
That's a
be
good point.
I think that would be the route to take, because if you can take 2 of 3 against Tennessee and win the series, I think you count that as a win, especially given the staff that you're facing. So I think it really all just swings on how those first 2 games go.
That's a really good point, because it's clear that one of the reasons why they started her in game 3 against Missouri is because they lost game 2.
Right.
But it's also clear that they didn't play her in game 2. Like if they wanted to sell out to win those first 2 games, they would have played Landry in
Right.
that second game and hoped. But also at the same time, Kirsten Dill was playing better. But there's an argument to be made that you start her game 1 and have her ready to come in relief in game 2. The downside though is if you do that and you still lose, then you're in a tough spot for game 3.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think, Brian, that this is going to be like, if there's a game, which obviously you don't want to push it, you don't want to aggravate an injury, but if there's a series that it would be really good if Audrey Lowry played, it's this one.
Yeah.
It's only going to get tougher from here to throw her out there after an extended absence.
Right.
Tennessee is a good offense. It is not the best offense OU is going to face. And if she misses this weekend, I mean, that is 3 straight conference weekends she's missed when you still have Alabama, Florida, Texas on your schedule. That's a really tough place to be.
Yeah.
I really wonder if she throws.
It's going to be telling. Like it's going to be telling, because I think if she doesn't, you almost have to wonder, is she going to be shut down? Like at some point, because it's like you just said, you can't. There's so much rhythm to this game that if you get to Tuscaloosa and she hasn't thrown for this many weekends in a row, and Alabama's offense is in a roll, you can't. I mean, throwing a freshman out there on the road, it could be real. Like that could be detrimental not to her season but to her career. There's so much about confidence in that circle. So yeah, I think it's going to be telling, because if she doesn't throw, you kind of have to wonder. It's a if not now, a win situation, pretty much.
I think to talk about the offense a little bit, I don't really. I mean, Nelly Macaron-Marinas and Gabby Garcia were both fantastic against Wichita State, because they are both fantastic players. They are both becoming stars. They both went 3 for 5. It was great to see that.
Right.
I think they've earned the bit. I mean, now this Tennessee pitching staff is a different test. It'll be interesting to watch them from the standpoint of when they face really elite pitching like this, do they still play really well? Now, I don't think you have to put a ton of stock if both of them struggle. I think
Mm-hmm.
it's just more about if they keep playing like they have against a really elite Tennessee pitching staff, then you've got two superstars in the making. That's how
Yep.
good they are. I
Yep.
do wonder about the rest of this team, Bryan, because Patty Gasso, when she was asked about Ella Parker, which we've talked about Ella Parker's struggle, she's batting 091 in conference play. She went 1-9 last weekend, didn't have any walks. Patty certainly made it seem like she's dealing with an injury, with
Yep.
a leg or a foot or a toe injury. I had a couple of people reach out to me to suggest that she just hasn't looked comfortable, like sitting in her stance. And then that was before Patty kind of indicated that she's hurt. I think that's something to monitor. And then outside of that, I think this is just going to be again, who is somebody outside of Nelly Macaron Marinas and Gabby Garcia that step up? Who is somebody else that gets things going? Um, Pickering last night went 2 for 4. She had a home
Yep.
run. That was really encouraging. Isabella Emmerling had another home run last night. That was encouraging. I think I'm more just curious about who steps out outside of Nelly and Gabby. And I'm also curious about if the home runs slow down,
Yes.
because you mentioned that last week. But if the home runs slow down, what does their offense look like? But at the same time, this is a pitching staff that gave up 5 home runs, or that's given up 5 home runs in conference play. So I'm just curious, can this offense find success against a Tennessee team that looks really elite, but last
Yeah.
weekend against Arkansas was rough too? I don't know. What
Well,
are you looking for?
if they can figure Pickens out with as much juice as she's throwing with, I mean, when you're throwing that fast, you make good contact with the ball, moving that fast. There's a good chance that you're knocking it out of the park if you can make good contact with it. The problem is it's really hard to hit something moving like that. So yeah, if they can time things up, I think that this is a situation where Oklahoma could take advantage of that speed, because that's just that's what Oklahoma is doing right now. Well, is hitting the ball and hitting it hard. But I think if you get into a situation where Oklahoma is having to face, I'll put it this way: when Oklahoma's having to face teams that are throwing a lot of pitchers that are going to end up in the dirt, are going to end up, that's what is going to really affect this team right now. Well, when you have somebody that is getting a lot of putouts because they're just ground out pitchers, that's what's going to affect this team. It's just more difficult to score when you're not able to move the bat, when you're really hanging on to those home runs. And I think that like you just mentioned, they've given up 5 home runs in conference play. I think Oklahoma has an opportunity there. But it's really going to come down to, can Oklahoma avoid mistakes on the other side?
Couldn't have said it better myself, Mr. Clinton. And with
Appreciate that.
that, we're going to end this podcast for today. This has been another episode of the Oklahoma Drill. Appreciate you guys tuning in. As always, make sure to like and subscribe here at this OU Insider YouTube channel. Become a VIP member at ouinsider.com today. As always, this has been another episode of the Oklahoma Drill. We'll be back next week. We'll be back either Sunday or Monday for an episode of Quick Slants to react to this OU Tennessee softball series. And then later in the week, we'll be back with another episode of the Oklahoma Drill to talk about more football stuff, because we'll be like a week away from the Crimson Combine at that point. And to break down some more softball stuff, you guys aren't going to want to miss it. Make sure, again, to like and subscribe here at this OU Insider YouTube channel. Thank you, as always, to you, Mr. Clinton. Appreciate you guys. We'll be back next week on another episode of the Oklahoma Drill. Till then, take care.